Good evening, everyone. This is Rebecca with Red True Crime, and we are going to talk about a case that's been solved, but just talk about the nuances and what has happened since it happened. So, we are going to talk about the Chain of Rocks bridge murder, Jillian Robin Carey. So, in April 1991, two sisters went for a nighttime walk across the historic bridge in St. Louis and never came back. What followed was a horrifying discovery, a controversial trial, and decades of pain and debate. This is the story of Julia Robin Carey and the tragic murders that shocked a city and divided a nation. The Chain of Rocks Bridge stretches across the Mississippi River, connecting Missouri to Illinois. So it's a massive bridge. Once a part of historic Route 66, by 1991, the bridge was closed to vehicles and often visited by walkers, graffiti artists, and those seeking solitude. And I understand how that goes because we have some bridges like that in Cincinnati, Ohio, or, we have a flood wall on the Kentucky side, and I used to go down there and just look at the water and the city lights. It was very peaceful. So on the night of April 4th, 1991, Julie Carey, 20, and her sister Robin Carey, 19, walked onto the bridge with her cousin Thomas Cummins to show him the view and the poetic graffiti they'd written. It was supposed to be a peaceful evening. It turned into a nightmare. While on the bridge, the trio was confronted by a group of men. 4 young men, Reginald Clemens, Antonio Richardson, Marlon Gray, and Daniel Winfrey, were reportedly hanging out on the bridge as well. What happened next is pieced together from conflicting testimonies and court documents. According to the prosecutors, the girls were raped, and all 3 were forced to jump or thrown off the bridge. Thomas Cummins survived the fall and swam to shore, bloody, panicked, and confused. Initially, police suspected him of the crime, but within days, the story would shift. Police arrested 4 men, and under intense questioning, Daniel Winfrey, the youngest of the group, confessed. He named the others and took a plea deal. The others, including Reginald Clemens, would eventually be tried for the rape and murder. Clemens denied his involvement and claimed police brutality during his interrogation. Still, he was sentenced to death in 1993. Marlon Gray and Antonio Richardson were also convicted. Gray was executed in 2005. Richardson's sentence was later commuted to life without parole. But controversy would soon follow. Over the years, Reginald Clemens' case drew national attention. Civil rights groups, including Amnesty International, argued his confession was coerced. His trial was unfair, and that racial bias played a role. In 2015, his conviction was overturned, and a special master found flaws in how the case was handled. But in 2017, Clemens was reindicted, and in 2020, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder, rape, and robbery. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences. For many, the case still feels unresolved. Julie and Robin Carey were not just victims of a heinous crime. They were talented, creative young women. Julie was a writer and an artist. Robin was known for her compassion and poetic soul. Their family worked tirelessly to preserve the memory and speak out about violence against women. What happened to them on the Chain of Rocks Bridge changed lives forever. So, one thing's not been completely clear. When this incident first happened, Thomas Cummins, the cousin who survived, the police looked at him at first because they didn't understand how the other 2 went missing, and he survived. And I can say this: they never did find one of the girls because they jumped into the Mississippi River. So, one second here. Yeah, they never did find, I can't remember which one it was. Here it is. think it was Robin that they never did find. So anyway, like I said, there was they all three jumped in. Thomas was able to swim to the side. They found Julie weeks later, and yeah, it's just totally awful. So police initially refused to believe what Thomas Cummins had to say. They theorized that the other men never existed and that he had made up the story to cover up his attempted rape of his cousins. Why they thought this guy was trying to, sexually assault his own cousins, I don't know. They believed Julie had fallen off the bridge while resisting his sexual advances, and Robin had jumped in to save her, and both had drowned. Cummins was initially charged with murder but released due to lack of evidence, and later won a settlement from the St. Louis Police Department for wrongful interrogation techniques. So it sounds like that one defendant, what was his name, Antonio Richardson, may have had a case about being not so much not tortured per se, but just wrongful interrogation techniques. So I actually got that confused. The body of Julie Carey was found 3 weeks later near Caruthersville, Missouri, and Robin Carey was never found. Now, when they found the other 4 guys, I'm not quite sure how they found... Oh, I remember now. They were bragging to people about what they did. And one of them, Thomas Cummins, was wearing a watch. One of the guys stole the watch from him and was actually wearing it. So that was one way that they were able to say, yep, this is our guy. So, but Marlon Gray, this is his story. He said that in 2005, he said that after partying from the group of 3, Gray went to the car where he smoked marijuana with Richardson, while Richardson went to retrieve a flashlight that he had left on the bridge. Gray returned to the bridge 30 minutes later to find that the girls and the cousin were gone, and Richardson said that Cummins had said the girls had slipped off the bridge but thought the authorities could not believe this story. Cummins was then robbed by the men of his belongings. The version given by Gray at his trial was different and also differs from what police said that he told them in his initial interview. Returning after 30 minutes to the car, Clemens informed him that, man, I just robbed that guy and threw him and the girls into the river. So, but like they said, they initially refused to believe Thomas Cummins and theorized that the other men never existed. So, Daniel Winfrey, who was 15 years old at the time, confessed to the murder in the presence of the police and his parents. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and forcible rape and then testified against the other 3 in their trials. He received a 30-year sentence. He testified that Clemens and Richardson were the ones who had pushed the 2 girls. Winfrey was the only white member of the convicted group, which had been raised as a criticism since he was the main prosecution witness. Winfrey was granted parole in the summer of 2007. When released, he had served 15 years. Clemens was sentenced to death, but his conviction was overturned in 2015. On December 18, 2017, Clemens pled guilty to 5 counts, 2 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of rape, and 1 count of first-degree robbery. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences, without the possibility of parole. Richardson was also given the death sentence. However, it was commuted to life in prison by the Supreme Court of Missouri in October 2003. The court cited his sentencing by a judge rather than a jury to be a violation of Apprendi v. New Jersey, a case that has decided long after the imposition of sentence. Richardson had been the focus of strenuous efforts by the death penalty opponents due to his alleged mental deficiencies and because of his age at the time of the murders, even though his own psychologist and his mother testified that he knows the difference between right and wrong. In 2005, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that executions of persons who committed their crimes as juvenile were unconstitutional, which now that actually plays a role with Carmelo Anthony in the Austin Metcalf case in Texas. And for those of you who don't know who that is, Carmelo Anthony is a 17-year-old boy that stabbed Austin Metcalf, another 17-year-old boy. And it was a track meet in Frisco, Texas. In Texas, Carmelo Anthony cannot get the death penalty because he was a minor when he committed the crime. So he will get life in prison, but he will also, because he was a minor when he committed the crime, he will get a possibility of parole after 30 years. So there's that. But that case has not even gone to trial yet, so I'm not sure when that's going to start, but it's going to be a minute. Execution. So Gray's execution date was set by the Missouri Supreme Court for October 26, 2005. Governor Matt Blunt denied Gray clemency on October 25th based on a recommendation by the Missouri Board of Probation and Parole. That same day, the Supreme Court of the United States denied his motions to stay his execution. Gray asked that no member of his family witness the execution, which he described as murder, although a female cousin and a minister were present. The only witness for the crimes present at the execution was Kevin Cummins, the uncle of the two girls. Gray also made no last meal request and gave no instructions for the disposal of his body. His final statement: "I will go forward now on wings built by the love and support of my family and friends. I go with a peace of mind that comes from never having taken a human life. I forgive those who have hardened their hearts to the truth, and I pray that they ask forgiveness, for they know not what they do. This is not a death, it is a lynching." So this is what he had to say. So it says here, Reginald Clemens was awarded a new trial in 2015. Prosecutors presented new evidence that proved Gray was on the bridge during the crimes. Clemens' guilty plea states DNA from Clemens and a co-defendant, Marlon Gray, indicative of sexual activity, was found on pants Gray wore during the crime. For his plea, Clemens was given 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole instead of the death penalty. So, there you have it. So Marlon Gray, stated he was innocent up until the day he died. But DNA doesn't lie. So they were able to match DNA to prove that he was there. So he may not have thrown those girls into the water, but he definitely had part in the sexual assault aspect. The Chain of Rocks murders remains one of the most heartbreaking crimes in Missouri's history. A case marked by violence, racial tension, and a decades-long battle for justice. So, do you know? Let me know. Do you think justice was truly served in this case? Do you think the family's ever been able to get closure because they never did find Robin's body? After all this time, she was never been recovered. So they only were able to bury one of their children. But if you find this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. And let me know what you think. This is Rebecca with Red True Crime. You all have a wonderful day, and thanks for tuning in. Be weird, be rude, be safe. Bye.